Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there in Cougar Nation. All right, let's talk about BYU football and Drake Toll's love for the BYU Cougars. Now, here's the deal. I get people all the time asking me, Jake, what is Drake? What does he like so much about BYU? I'll just sum it up by saying this. Drake is enamored with the way the BYU fans are in love with BYU sports, in particular BYU football and BYU basketball. Yes, he caters to BYU. Yes, he understands that BYU fans respond to his content in mass. And trust me, I'm a beneficiary of that myself because I, hosted a daily podcast covering the BYU Cougars. The bigger point is Drake also is not a guy who's going to sit around and idly just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to pick BYU to finish second in the Big 12 conference out of just because I want clicks. He's got his parameters of why he believes in BYU, and that's why he's got the Cougars projected at 10-2 this fall. Now, I will tease ahead later this week. I plan to do this Thursday. I didn't know that Drake was going to drop it yesterday. I thought it was going to be coming later in the week. He did his predictions for the season for the Big 12. But I have a plan to do a full kind of preview edition on Thursday. That includes the Big 12, BYU game by game, and also I'm going to pick the college football playoff. I'm going to project the 12 teams I think will be playing for the national championship. So stay tuned for that on Thursday. But Drake dropped this yesterday where he projects Texas Tech to finish 11-1. And I got to see if I can get this pulled up here. I forgot to pull it up before we started talking. I'll get it as we go along here. But the bigger point is that BYU is in very, very good company with Drake and what he's projecting for BYU and the Big 12 conference. And the bigger issue is he has got them finishing second behind the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now, does that mean that this is absolutely going to come to pass? No, this is a projection. I can respect the fact that Drake wants to project what he thinks the Big 12 is going to do. But the best part about this is, I'm going to share this right now, throw it up on our graphics so you guys can see it, is that he projects Texas Tech with all of their transfer portal additions to go 11-1, BYU finishing second at 10-2, and then Utah finishing third at 9-3. Now he also has Kansas State, Arizona State, and Baylor all sitting at 9-3 as well. So essentially a four-way tie for third place. But he does have the Red Raiders and the Cougars matching up in Arlington for the Big 12 title. I think that's actually a very, very strong argument to be made that could be the reality, but it's going to require that, Bear Bachmeier become everything that BYU hopes he can become. I appreciate the fact that Drake's got his conviction. There's always a look of saying, okay, why is he projecting this? And he explained it pretty strongly yesterday. He believes that BYU's got enough talent to surround a guy like Bear Bachmeier and essentially overcome some of the odds that were, or the deck that's been stacked against them. You lose Jake Retzloff. There's a lot of people thinking that BYU is going to fall way off the pace. And I can understand that. But the bigger point to be made here is I've been saying it all off season long that, yes, while Jake Retzloff was a loss for the BYU football program, it's absolutely undeniable it's a loss. It's more important, I think, to look at it from the parameters that, yes, while Jake Retzloff exited, Keelan Marion left, Harrison Taggart left, and obviously you lost Darius Lassiter to graduation because he couldn't get an eligibility waiver. You lost some pieces. But the pieces that return, I think, outweigh what BYU lost in many respects. Now, you may argue at wide receiver that Keelan Marion and Darius Lassiter, there's nobody better to replace them. But I think it's JoJo Phillips, Parker Kingston, Cody Hagan. I think the sum total of BYU's wide receiving core, Reggie Frischneck thrown in there, along with Tei Nakua, etc., will make up for the fact that BYU may not have another 1B to the 1A that is Chase Roberts. At linebacker, Harrison Taggart was told in no uncertain terms that his starting position was tenuous at best, and in fact, he may very well have lost it to Siale Acera, and now with Che Bryant-Struther making a strong run in training camp, there's an argument to be made that Harrison Taggart would have fallen to third on the depth chart at middle linebacker, and it's not that he's a bad football player. Simply put, the other players on the roster are better than him, and BYU projected as such. That's why I think that Drake's argument here for BYU at 10-2, it's a decently strong one. Now, do I expect it? Man, I keep going back and forth because I want so badly to believe in BYU and their chances to overcome all the adversity they went through this offseason and all the stuff I hear slash talk to people about down there in Provo when I'm down at media availability. They have talked so often. They've used the phrase good to great. That is the quote, good to great. They hope to go from good last year, which is 11-2, finishing 13th in the country, and had a lot of people shouting that they should have gotten more full consideration to play in the Big 12, not the Big 12 title game, the college football playoff after they missed out on the title game. And I understand why those arguments came, but BYU knows that they messed up a major opportunity a season ago, and they came oh so close to playing in that Big 12 title game and potentially punching their ticket to the college football playoff. They want to take that next step. And yes, they have lost some pieces that helped them get near that a season ago, but they believe that they will find the options or the answers they need to get them over the top. I look at this and I think it's a good projection of what the Big 12 is going to entail because if I'm not mistaken, looking at this, he's got 13 teams bowl eligible this season. Colorado at number 13 is 6-6, and Cincinnati is 1 win away from bowl eligibility in these projections from Drake. So what he's also projecting is a very much dog-eat-dog conference with Texas Tech and BYU kind of stepping above the fray and being just a little bit of a cut above the rest. It'd be interesting. I really think the Big 12 this year is going to cannibalize itself. And that can be really bad when it comes to the college football playoff. There's just no denying the fact that it could absolutely hurt BYU in the Big 12 by extension if they were to finish, let's say, like a 9-3, find themselves in a tiebreaker scenario and trying to fight, scratch, and claw their way into a Big 12 title game once again. But I was listening. I say this often. I love the Solid Verbal podcast. It's a great college football podcast. If you're looking for one that looks at things from a national level, they actually were projecting like, hey, I think there's going to be at some point like a multi-team tie for a conference playoff berth or a conference title game berth. And he said like a 5-way playoff going down to like the playoff tie-breaking scenarios way down the list. Well, if there's a conference that's going to have that, in my opinion, it's the Big 12. It just, you have 4 teams here from Drake projected at 9-3. Well, guess what? To sort that out, that's going to have all kinds of tiebreakers in that scenario. With Houston right behind them, West Virginia, he expects a big leap up. There's a lot of teams here. He actually thinks that Iowa State's going to sink back all the way to 11th at 7-5. Bold stuff from Drake. And I look at it and say, I want nothing more than to see BYU playing in Arlington. I can tell you right now, if BYU makes it to the Big 12 title game, yours truly will be down there at AT&T Stadium taking in the sights and sounds. And I know a number of you made the trip last year because it sure looked like BYU was all but there. And then ultimately, mess things up with that loss to Kansas and a subsequent loss to Arizona State. But I would love to see BYU playing for a conference championship. And I'll have more. I've really got to dig down and look at some stats. I've been reading a lot of the Pick Six preview stuff from Brett Ciancia. And I'm so on the cusp of saying, hey, I really think that BYU could be upper tier Big 12 team, even with a freshman quarterback and Bear Bachmeier starting for them. But then there's just that little part of me that says history tells us that starting quarterbacks of that variety, speaking of true freshmen, rarely does it come smoothly for a program like that. But hey, Drake's a believer. Why aren't you? So let me know. It'd be interesting. But once again, Thursday, I'll have my full projections and I will reveal exactly game by game where I think things go for BYU. And we'll have that for you guys on our Thursday edition of the podcast.